Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Back at it again. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, do you have absolutely no idea where to start when it comes to EDC knives, survival knives, hell, for that matter, even like urban fighting knives, which we'll talk more about that later. What if you're like a novice and you just want to start carrying knives, but it's just so many on Amazon, Blade HQ, just all over the place, so many to choose from. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the different quality of steel that you can buy and kind of the EDC knives that I carry and why I carry those. So even if you're brand new to the EDC knife game, or if you're like Rambo, and this is just a video to watch and poke fun at because I am not a knife expert. I just know what I like and I carry what I like. You should check this out definitely. But first, if you are like a man cave enthusiast or a babe cave enthusiast for that matter, and you know, I'll talk more about that. I just recently built my wife a babe cave, which is a real thing. And I'm actually kind of proud. It looks pretty dang good if you ask me myself. Or if you just like to keep up with your tools, maybe prep, survival, that type of stuff, you need to hit that subscribe button. I see that over 80% of the people here that view my channel are still new. So welcome. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, man. I'm always trying to motivate folks to keep up with their man cave or their babe cave or whatever, and just elevate yourself to that next level. So we do that stuff here as well. Another thing, so I have a Discord channel, link is below. I get way more in depth on my Discord channel. So the first thing we want to go over is generally the parts of a knife, right? Let's just bacon, lettuce, and tomato this thing. First of all, I keep all my knives in this like Molly pack that I found on Amazon. I think it was reasonably priced, to be honest with you. So it didn't cost an arm and a leg. So we can kind of go over, the different parts of the knife. They're similar for fixed blade and for folding. There are a few subtle differences that we'll talk about here. So I keep my knives here for a couple of reasons. One, I like the way this bag looks. Everything's in one place. That's always a good thing. But secondly, I can keep this bag out of reach of the kiddos, out of reach of folks who want to just finger and just freaking touch all over my knives. Keep this high. I don't have to worry about anybody losing a limb or anything like that. So that's why I keep this specific bag. I'll link all this stuff up below. So if there's anything that you see here today that you really like, I'll link it up and make sure you can check it out. Maybe you'll grab yourself some. So this one here is called the Benchmade Bug Out. This is the federal government edition. So it's actually a really nice knife. This is an assisted opening. So it does have a thumb stud. This thumb stud is this little piece here that I'm got my finger on. You can push that. It has an assisted opening. It makes it easy opening. Means that you do have to put some positive pressure onto the blade to actually put it back and to the handle itself. So just going over the different parts of the blade. Let's just go over the different parts of the knife altogether. So here, this entire part here, obviously, is the blade, right? The very, very point of the blade, that's called the tip. I know you probably heard that plenty of times in movies or so forth. This very bottom part is called the edge, right? So if you ever hear somebody says, how good, how long does that knife keep its edge? They're referring to this part here. This specific knife has a serrated edge and it has a smooth edge as well. Some knives have a bevel or a grind. This one has a slight bevel on it. I don't know if you can see that in the camera. So this knife has a thumb stud. Not all knives have a thumb stud. A thumb stud is a way that you can use as an opening mechanism. Like I said, this is an assistant opening knife, meaning it's not automatic, that I still have to put positive pressure on the thumb stud to actually open it, or I can whip it, which I don't like to do. I'm not a big fan of whipping knives like that because you can let it go and it can go off to a distance. Prefer to just simply use the thumb stud, push it out. I see that as being way more safe. This here is a lanyard hole. This entire part is called the handle, right? Makes sense, right? So sometimes the handle can have a little bit of framing screws throughout. This has 2 framing screws, and there's different milling on different knives. So there is G10, there's polymer, there's aluminum, steel, carbon fiber, handles are made of different materials. Just all depends on what your preference is. This knife does not have an open pivot point, such as this little knife here. You can clearly see the pivot point on the back of the knife. This here, this Federal Edition, you can't see the pivot point at all, whereas this knife, you can see the pivot point. So, but all knives have a pivot point. Some are not exposed, some are exposed. So some differences with a fixed blade knife. If you see here, the fixed blade knife has some of the same elements. Obviously, it still has a blade. It still has an edge. This one has a completely smooth edge. Both of these knives are what's called a drop point knife, right? So that's one of my favorite types of knives to carry is a drop point. They both have a tip. This one has a lanyard hold as well. Not all knives have lanyard holds. This one doesn't have that framing screws, right? So this handle is built a little bit differently because this is more of a survival or crafting knife. It's a thicker gauge of steel. If you see this here, where this one's almost a 1/4 of an inch, this one's probably around 1/8 of an inch thick. So fixed blade knives usually carry a different purpose. Now, this is not a requirement of knives, but usually quality knives will do things where on the actual blade itself, usually on the back side of the blade, oftentimes they'll put the quality of steel on the back of the blade. So here, let's see if you can see this. So here on this blade, you can kind of see it. It does say S30V. We'll talk about the different categories to go a little bit closer. S30V right there on the back of that blade. So a lot of knives will, they'll carry the type of quality of steel right on the knife. Some knives have jipping on the back, and there's jipping on the back, which allows for if you're going to be hitting it with like blunt force objects, it keeps that item from like slipping. So, sometimes with the survival knife, this one doesn't have jipping, but you'll have some jipping here. So that if you're hitting it with like a, like a 1/4 inch log or something like that, it doesn't slip down the blade. So some knives have a liner lock. This one does not have a liner lock, whereas at this knife does have a little liner lock. A liner lock is just a lock that you have to engage with your thumb in order for the blade to go back down. So this bug out Federal Edition does not have a liner lock because the locking mechanism is back here. So to engage that, I just press down there and it goes back into its downward position. So I know that was really bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes of like the parts of a knife, but sometimes we got to just bring ourselves all the way down and just realize like the real basics of what we're dealing with, right? All right, so now I want to just go over a few types of knives. So this knife here that you were looking at, this is an assistant opening knife. It's not an automatic knife because I do have to assist it with my thumb. Whereas I have this, we'll just put this here, this Gerber knife that I've had probably for 10 years. This is a fully automatic knife. So if I just take the safety off, so now you see it's red, I push this button and the knife completely engages itself. This one has a little bit more bevel to it, has a longer serrated edge. So this style here will be considered more like a Tanto or a Tanto type blade itself. It's not really a drop blade. So the first one is an automatic blade, fully automatic blade. The second one is generally just a folding knife. So any of these knives that don't have automatic blades would be considered folding knives, right? So this mini bug out knife, this mini Benchmade, it is similar to its big brother that I was just showing you here. This is also S30V steel. And so this one here is not as much as an assistant as the Federal Edition, but these are just all folding knives, right? So that automatic one, it was a folding knife, but it was a fully automatic knife, so it can be considered, that. So we also have fixed blade. Now, fixed blade knives can be good for a number of reasons. This here, this Gerber fixed blade knife is similar to this Benchmade fixed blade knife. This Benchmade fixed blade is an S30V type steel. It's just more of it. It is thicker, so it's definitely designed for more bushcraft, for more survival type situations. This here, this is a Gerber infantry style knife, so this is more of a fighting knife. You can use this for survival, but this knife is really designed for fighting. So it does have the same characteristics as what we were just seeing. It has definitely a blade on it. It has some beveling on it. It has a tip. This has more of a serrated edge versus this other fixed blade knife. This one has more pronounced thumb guards, right? So if I'm using this for fighting type method, that's less likely that my thumb is going to slip onto the blade, or even if I'm using it opposite direction, it's less likely my thumb is going to slip. Let's remember the first rule of a knife fight is you're going to get cut. Let's just get that out the way. So if you do decide to keep an urban fighting knife like I do, that's the first rule with knife fighting is you're going to get cut. Anyways, this one here has a glass breaker component here at the very tip, has a lanyard hole with some makeshift paracord that was put in here. This knife is MOLLE compatible, so it fully can connect to a MOLLE system. So you can put this on your hip or you can connect this to a bag. So that's the third type of knife. And then another type of knife, which is commonly used for survival. This is called a Balisong knife. So this is a Balisong machete. This is also made by Gerber. So you come here, you expose the machete blade itself, and it comes to a positive point where you have to push down on these little levers here that has a little positive control. You push there, bring it all the way down, engage the clasp at the bottom. Now you have fully exposed the machete itself. So this is 428C. So something I would consider to be more of, technically it would really be a mid-grade. You can kind of put it in the level of high end, but it's designed to get beat up, right? So this one definitely has that jipping that we were talking about, so that if you're hitting this with a log or something like that, it's designed to allow that log to hit one constant area over and over. Really, really thick blade itself. This blade is probably has to be almost 1/4 of an inch thick. Really, really good for light log splitting. You can use this for clearing. You may have seen my larger machete in my vehicle EDC video. That thing is gone. I went to my bug out area just to check on things. I tried to use it to clear some brush. It was just getting laughed out. That was also made by Gerber, coincidentally. So I immediately wanted to make an acquisition that will be a little bit better at clearing out items versus that big machete. And it was kind of big and kind of cumbersome and all that good stuff as well. So folding knives, fixed blade, Balisong, those are the different types of knives. There's also a knife called a OTF, which stands for out the front. I don't own an out the front knife, but those are the knives that you push the little button and it kind of goes out the front. This will be similar to that. This is a fixed blade dagger type knife, but imagine that this was the blade and I push a button in it and it kind of just shoots itself outward. All right, that's an out the front OTF blade or OTF knife. I don't carry that. That's just something I generally don't carry. So those are the types of knives. So let me clear this out the way. So let's talk about the quality of steel and the steel that you may want to carry on an EDC. You may want to carry in a survival bag and hunting situations. And for myself, I have minimums that I carry. So the first, let's call it the first category of steel that I would say. All these categories of steel are based on quality and cost of the steel, okay? So sometimes you can get more quality on a lower, I would say branding or lower makeup of steel, depending on how it's forged, how it's put together, how much of it you have. This 420C machete blade that I just had, a 428C blade, would be considered more of closer to that budget end, but because it's so thick and it's well made, has good beveling, that will be considered something that will make it better quality. So first, let's start with the budget. So I have lots of budget knives that I have acquired over time. Sometimes I acquired them because I thought they looked nice. Sometimes I acquired them because I thought it was a good idea. So let me just show you a few of these budget knives. So budget knives are often the knives that have a few things that I'm not a big fan of. So first of all, usually the quality of steel is either unlisted or it's listed and it's clearly easy to tell that it's just not that high quality. So here I have a mossy oak fixed blade knife. This one here rusts like crazy. It's hard to keep clean. It's hard to maintain an edge. Doesn't even tell me, gives me absolutely no indicator of what gauge steel this is. Might even be just stainless steel. I'm not even sure. They do try to, so a lot of these budget type knives, they try to sweeten the deal for purchasing their knives by doing things like putting glass breakers on them, making sure you have a lanyard hole like you see here on this Mossy Oak here. It's a name brand. This does have a thumb stud on it, which you would be led to believe would be really, really good for opening, but it's hard to open. I feel actually kind of feel unsafe opening this knife. Just not a big fan of it. It does have a flipper component here, but it's just like placed at this weird top angle. Has a little bit of jipping on the blade itself, but that jipping kind of like folds into the handle. So it's not really useful. So these two knives here, really, really cheap knives. These are some Chinese made knives. Same type of thing they do here. They try to sweeten the deal with glass breakers on the bottom. These look like they could have been made in the same factory and just a little bit different handle casing. They're not even the exact same knife, but they look really similar. I will say that this knife was given to me for free. The company wanted me to do a full review on the knife. That was not going to happen, but I am willing to show their knife as what we would call the budget category. So another feature for these budget category knives, I will say this knife does have a nice flipper. So I give them that. It's a flipper knife, so easy to flip open. Doesn't give me much resistance there. It's a drop point knife. Not sure what's going on with these holes. Like knives that have that, just for me, it kind of messes up the integrity of the knife. It does have a thumb stud on it. I guess you can use a thumb stud for opening, but it's not very smooth. This knife as well has a flipper on it. Flips way smoother than this other one. Both of these, like I say, Chinese made knives. I would definitely keep these knives, you know, but I would use these primarily for like opening Amazon packages, stuff like that. So this Magnum knife is actually a pretty, actually feels pretty solid. AUS 8 knife. It's made by Magnum. So it is a budget steel and a budget knife. But one thing I will say about this knife is that it does feel well made. It feels nice in the hand. It clearly says the I don't know if you can see that, the AUS 8 on the blade, but this is supposed to be a fully automatic knife and it has not worked since I got it. So Magnum, if you're watching this video, it's made by Boker, right? It has not worked since I got it. I put some honing oil on it, put some knife oil on it. It just does not work. Even if I push this and I did some research on the knife, it's supposed to push the button. You're supposed to push the button. It's supposed to swing open, similar to this Gerber knife here, where I release the safety, I push the button, it opens. This knife does not do that, which leads me to believe something is wrong with it. Even if I push the button and try to swing it open, it still won't open. I have to physically engage the back of the blade to pull it out. Another thing I'm not a big fan of any of these budget knives, the pocket clip is not reversible. So I prefer to carry my knife, whenever I'm carrying my knives, I prefer to carry them tip up. So it makes for, imagine this is, if I'm carrying this knife for the day, the tip is facing this way. So you see the pocket clip is here. So in theory, I will be putting, so the pocket clip is here, I will be putting this in my pocket. So when I pull this, when I reach into my pocket and pull it out, I can open it in one motion. So I prefer to carry it with the tip up, and it's usually with the actual blade itself facing forward in the direction that I'm walking. So if you can do those things, that's always a good thing. None of these knives allow for me to go tip up. They're all tip down, and none of the pocket clips are reversible. It's usually another element of a budget knife is you can't manipulate the pocket clip, and I'm not a big fan of that as well. So that's usually something that's gonna make it to my junk drawer. Budget knives, don't skip out on them. You see I had them in this, this Molly case here. I still carry them, but I keep them in, I don't carry them on my body rather, excuse me. I keep them in junk drawers. I may keep them in this case. I may keep them in my desk drawer just to have a knife if I get a package, something like that. And I just want to be able to have something so I can open it. So it's not a complete no to have the budget knives. It's just not my go-to. This next category of knives and steel, I would call mid-grade. And with your mid-grade knives, you're going to go from like 440 A and B to 440 C. You're going to get a little bit more quality. You're going to get the ability to you know, manipulate pocket clips, and it's usually just a little bit better quality of knife and steel. So I have a couple of mid-grade knives here, and don't let the word mid-grade be a reason to think that the quality of blade itself is just going to be really poor. So if we're looking here, this is a flipper knife. It also has a thumb stud that you can engage. I actually enjoy using the flipper part of the knife. It's a flipper is a opening mechanism for a knife. This one here, I actually have no clue what the brand is. I saw it on Amazon. I saw that it was a mid-grade steel. The price went from 50 something bucks to like $17.99. I'll link it up below. And I thought it was just a really good deal. It does have the actual milling itself is like a G10. A G10 is like a polymer type of high-end plastic. So it feels good in the hand. It's easy to hold in the hand itself. Has a little lanyard here. The blade itself is not really a drop blade. It's more of like a modified blade. So it's kind of a mixture of a Tanto, a drop blade. It's kind of, it gives you a dagger feel. It's not necessarily, you know, the one specific type. This one clearly here says 440C. So put it in that category of the mid-grade steel. So one thing I still knock this blade for is I still cannot manipulate the pocket clip. Now, this knife, when I'm carrying it, it came the way that I prefer to hold it, right? So the pocket clip is facing the general direction I like. The blade is up. So, but imagine if I was somebody who liked to carry blade down. You can't even switch this around. It's not a complaint for me because it's the direction I want it to be. I do carry this knife every now and again though. This is a nice knife to have. And you know, you've already seen this Gerber infantry knife. Just talk about it a little bit more. So Gerber American made knife out of Portland, Oregon. The overall length of this thing is almost 11 inches. So it's about 10.5 inches once you get it out of its sheath. The blade material is 420 HC, similar to this knife here. This is just simply, this is a 440. This blade here is a 420 HC. So they're still in that same mid-grade category, but it's still a really, really good knife. So the sheath itself that we had earlier is nylon. It is MOLLE compatible. So a really nice, this is a tactical style knife. It does have a serrated edge as we talked about earlier. And I'm gonna do a video soon about an urban fighting bag, an urban fight kit. You know, this is something that is going to be in my urban fight kit. We'll talk more about that. So the handle itself is actually a glass-filled nylon with a TPV over mode, which is basically a high quality type of plastic over mode. It feels really good in the hand. It's designed to reduce shock when you're using this braking feature. So that is the mid-grade knife, just a couple of those. Now moving on to the high end. So I would call this the high end. I have a lot of knives in this category, and I'm not even gonna go over all of them for the sake of time. But you know, I am a big fan of having a quality of knife that you can depend on, and you're not going to have to worry about it not working, right? So this is a different type of knife. This is technically a cigar cutter. However, this is a cigar cutter that is made by Benchmade. This thing is sharp. It gets the job done. This is S30V steel. It's really thick, cuts through cigars really easily, but you can also use this for other things if you need to snip something off or cut something. This still could be used to cut cordage. So it kind of goes two different ways. It has like a micrite. I don't even know how to pronounce. It's like basically a high glorified MDF. So like a faux wood type finish, but it does have the makeup of like wood. So I really like this as well. You've probably heard of EDC, right? Hopefully I'm saying their name right. This is their Kangaroo or their Kangaroo knife. This is a high quality fixed blade knife that I would also use for survival. You know, if you're going to be using this to prepare for fishing, you want to keep this for different reasons. It has a little bit of a thumb protect here. But you can use this for all sorts of things. Keep this in survival kits, keep this in your vehicles. Really small, but it's high quality. It's all one solid piece, so the handle flows right into the blade, has a really good edge. This is a really good knife as well. We talked about this mini bug out earlier. This is called the Benchmade Mini Bug Out. I think it's the 535 or the 533. I'll link it up below. Has a little lanyard, has a little blade. It's just a little knife. Drop point style, has a really phenomenal edge. Has that phenomenal edge because it is the S30V steel. So this is my truck knife. I keep these Benchmade Mini Bug Out knives in my truck. They're usually in my armrest at all times. So if I need to use it real quick, I always have a knife really close by. This final category of knife, I got two knives here for the high-end knives. This first one here is made by Benchmade. This is a dagger style knife. They have two different versions of these. You can get it in the 440C, which what I would call that mid-grade, or you can get it in S90V, which is the high-end type blade. This knife I carry almost every day. This is a fighting knife. I don't use this knife for anything else. This knife is always in its sheath. It's always sharp. It's always ready to rock and roll. Get you a good picture of it here. Has a nice smooth edge, has a serrated edge as well. Extremely, extremely sharp tip. This is definitely what you would consider a dagger, maybe even a spear point type knife. But I can use this in different methods if I needed to fight and not have to worry about losing control of the knife. I also don't have to worry about having a daw knife because this does not get used for anything else. I don't use it to open up Amazon. I don't cut cordage. I'm not using it for survival. This is only for fighting. This is also a Benchmade. This is a Benchmade bug out knife, except the difference here, this one here, the entire handle is made of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is often put on cars to make them more aerodynamic and make them faster. A completely carbon fiber type handle. The thumb stud is this nice blue thumb stud. And I actually need to put a little bit of oil on it. It's not really flipping out as easy as I would like for it to. But I really like this knife. I love the black carbon fiber and it contrasts with the blue lanyard hole here. The pocket clip is fully able to be manipulated if you want it to be, but it's already in the position that I like it in, which is tip up. The blade is S90V, high end. Let's get that in there. Blade. This is probably a $225 knife, which is a funny thing because this is a $225 knife. This is a $250 cigar cutter. Right? So just because you have a higher quality, high-end steel doesn't mean the lower end items aren't also demanding that money as well, right? So if we go to like this Benchmade bug out here, this is a S30V. This is probably a $170 knife as well. So it can get up there pretty quickly. If you want to get this Benchmade dagger, I don't even know if they make the high S90V anymore. If I see it, I'll link it up below. I definitely know they still make the 440C, which is like 85, 90 bucks. The higher end, you know, I'll see if I can find that, I'll link it up below. Having these in category, you know, line these up from left to right. Talk about what each offer and why you may want to consider carrying each. We're all the way over here for what we call our budget end. Our budget end is the most affordable. However, it offers the least amount of toughness for the steel itself. It also offers the least amount of edge retention, meaning the more you use it, the more you're going to have to sharpen it. It's not going to keep its edge, quote unquote, keep its edge very well. And it also offers, it normally offers the least amount of corrosion resistance. You saw that mossy oak knife that I pulled out earlier. I take care of my knives and that thing just rusts like it is crazy. However, a benefit of a budget knife is that they are extremely easy to sharpen. So you can sharpen a budget knife relatively easy. You're a little bit more forgiving if you're not good at sharpening or if you use an automatic sharpener, so forth and so on. So budget knives do have a place in the world. Type of knives you can keep in a junk drawer, keep around in a desk, so forth and so on. The mid-grade and the high-end knives are kind of almost, and that's why I have so many of them, because they're almost neck and neck in what they offer. Okay, so mid-grade and high-end offer the best around toughness, edge retention, corrosion resistance, and ease of sharpening. So they're not as easy to sharpen as the budget. You know, they're not going to have as much corrosion retention as the high end, so forth and so on. But these, you know, the mid-grade at high end, these two categories of knives give you the best all-around bang for your buck. It's probably why there's so many of them all over the place on Amazon, you know, Blade HQ, wherever. So, you know, if you're going to decide to get into that, you know, get into the mid-grade, you know kind of what you're going to be getting from those knives as well. The super, the very, very top here, it's going to offer the best edge retention hands down. It's also going to offer the most toughness. So this S90V steel has the best, it's best to keeping its edge. It has the most toughness. The supers are the hardest to sharpen. You know, the way that the blade is made up, the steel is made up, it's the hardest to sharpen these, especially if you're trying to go old school on a stone or something like that. So the supers have their pros and cons as well. One thing you have to ask yourself is, what is your goal when it comes to choosing a knife? Is it just gonna be for EDC carry? Is it gonna be for cutting cordage? Is it just gonna be for opening Amazon packages? Like, why do you want to purchase knives, right? Do you need a fixed blade knife for survival? You know, do you need a fixed blade knife for fighting? Do you need a Balisong knife for those times when you're going to be, you know, chopping down some machete type stuff? Like, why do you need the knife that you're interested in purchasing? So if you're able to, you know, get around to that, then you're definitely able to know which one's going to be best for you. You know, if you're liking this video, make sure you hit that like button and you leave a comment below. I try to engage as many of those as well as possible. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Hopefully it was something that was interesting. You know, I just tell you hands down, I'm a big fan of knives, EDC knives. I see them as very useful. I always have two knives on me: fighting knife, EDC knife. The EDC knife is usually a foldable knife. Some people like to carry fixed blade. I just think that's just too much out there. I don't want everybody knowing that I got this big fixed blade EDC. I already have a fixed blade fighting knife, and I do carry, when I create this urban fighting bag, I'll show you how you can incorporate a big survival type knife into that bag, because this is probably not going to be legal to carry a knife this big around on your body, depending on your state. I live in Texas. I could probably check that law and I might be surprised. But, you know, if you're interested in seeing more EDC type stuff, right? Click on this video right here. It's going to have my EDC tools, like the things I keep in my truck. So just click that video right there. If you're interested in seeing more videos about bags, right? I've already talked about this urban fight bag. Click that video down there. I'm going to have that whole survival bag playlist. You can just watch it until you drop, and I'll see y'all soon.